Most people think danger looks obvious, aggressive, loud, clearly wrong. But in reality, it often starts with something much quieter. It starts with someone not taking your no seriously. Let's talk about the conditioning. From a very young age, women are taught something that sounds harmless. Be nice, be polite, don't be rude, don't offend, don't overreact, and don't assume the worst. And what we're not taught is how to prioritize our safety over someone else's comfort. Let's talk about part 2, what boundary pressure looks like. Boundary pressure doesn't usually feel like force. It feels like discomfort. Example 1, the grocery scenario. So you have just got groceries. You are in the process of taking them to your apartment building when a gentleman comes up to you and he says, "Excuse me, ma'am, it looks like you have your hands full. I would really like to help you. Can I help you?" And you say, "No, thank you." To which he then responds, "Oh, well, I must not be good enough to help you. I mean, you're so strong and you can do it yourself. You're one of those can-do women. That's okay. You probably don't think that I'm good enough to help you, nor do you like me. So you don't trust me because, you're an all-powerful woman who can do it on your own." And then you are continuing on your way. And he says, "Well, that's fine. I mean, if you want to do it on your own, do it on your own. I mean, I don't even need to help you. I was just trying to be nice. But apparently you don't trust me. Apparently you don't like me. I don't know what your issue is. I mean, do it yourself." And then you shift from, "I don't want this person to help," to guilt because you've offended them or you've upset them or you've made them feel like a bad person. And now she's not responding to a request. She's responding to a social expectation, which if you're a woman, you uniquely understand this, whereas a man has no issue saying no, or most men don't have no issue saying no, right? She says yes, he enters her space, and then guess what? He now is in control of the situation, right? He didn't force his way in, he talked his way in. He talked his way in by guilting the woman into feeling like she was offending him and that she hurt him in some way and made him feel less than. But guess what? It is not our responsibility to cater to others' feelings in place of our safety. Because what happened in this story, this is actually from a book that I read when I was working at a rape crisis shelter when I went to college. And what ends up happening is he gets into the house and he gets all the control he needs because he takes advantage of her and harms her, commits a crime against her. And then she notices, he says, "I'm not going to hurt you." But she notices that he puts the windows down in her apartment. He turns the TV up. So he's changing the environment to make it more beneficial for him. And she, at that point, bravely decides that she is going to venture to her neighbors across the hall. And she is going to ask them for help. That is what saved her life. What could have ended her life through no fault of her own, but through conditioning that she had, was if she had not trusted her instincts and if she had not decided to try to escape. Because he had gone in the kitchen and gotten a knife. So clearly what she did was absolutely correct. And I, as a victim's advocate myself, both through sexual assault cases and domestic violence cases, will never shame the victim. And I know a lot of people say, oh, why didn't she fight? Why didn't she this? Why didn't she that? You know what? You don't know what you're going to do until you've done, until it happens to you. You don't know how you're going to react until it happens to you. And so ultimately, she did everything right because guess what? She survived the situation, and that is the most important thing she could have done. Let's talk about social pressure. Someone keeps asking for your number. You decline, they persist. Why won't you give it to me? I'm a nice guy. Here's the clue in that scenario. If a person has to tell you that they're a nice guy, even while continuing to badger you, right? They keep asking for your number and you decline and they continue to persist. What does that tell you? That tells you that that person is not going to listen to you. That your inability to do something for them that they want really badly is causing them to disregard your boundaries. And if someone disregards your boundaries asking for a number, imagine how they might disregard your boundaries in other scenarios. Pressure builds, and suddenly the discomfort of saying no feels worse than the risk of saying yes. But trust your gut because it's extremely important. Let's talk about emotional manipulation. You're overreacting. I was just trying to help. I don't understand what your problem is. Wow, okay, I see how it is. And it flips responsibility onto you. But guess what? You don't owe anyone an explanation as to why you want them to help you, why you don't want them to help you, why you don't want them to come into your apartment. I don't know you. I have no frame of reference with you. Well, you could get to know me. Actually, you know what? I can do this on my own. And you should not feel guilty for asserting yourself and being who you're supposed to be and who you want to be. Having a stranger come into your house, why would you do that? Especially when you have it handled. So why this works psychologically? This works because it bypasses your fear response and taps into your social conditioning. So ultimately, it is your fear of being rude, your fear of misjudging someone, and your desire to be seen as kind. You're not responding to danger, you're responding to discomfort. And oftentimes people will move differently to avoid discomfort. Let's talk about the critical shift. Discomfort is not danger. It's uncomfortable, sure. But can discomfort harm you? No. But ignoring discomfort can lead you into danger. And you need to trust your gut feeling, just like the lady in the story did, just like it. I wish I could remember the name of the book. But unfortunately, I haven't been able to find it. I've been looking for it for 10 years or more. Let's talk about part 5, red flags, clear and practical. If someone does not respect a small boundary, please do not come in through my hallway. They will not respect a bigger one. Here are some red flags that you need to look out for. They ignore your no. They keep pushing. They use guilt. They insert themselves into your space without permission. And they change your environment. So let's talk about rewriting the script. You are allowed to be kind, but you are not required to be compliant. You are not required to bend over backwards. You are not required to always say yes. You are not required to always be polite. I think I've told you this story. If I haven't, I will reiterate it really quick. I ended up going to Denny's with someone back when I was in college. All my sorority sisters were busy. And he said that he would drive, which, college town, you do things like that. So I put my hand on the door handle and I was immediately pushed back. I truly believe it was a God thing because if I had gotten into his car, I may not have gotten out of his car. So we end up going to Denny. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll drive. I'm driving on my own. So I drive in my car. I had a little boxy Chevy. And so I drive in my car and he literally comes up. I was like, hey, I'm going to the gas station over here. I'm like, okay, fine, you can go. I can go by myself. No big deal. And so we end up going and sitting down. And there is a server that I knew because I was a server at the time. in college, and I was talking to her. I talked to her all the time. I'd go Friday and Saturdays to get dinner and then come home from my shift. And he was like, why are you talking to the help? And I'm like, well, I also am a server, so what's the deal? And he was like, well, and then he started calling his mom really nasty, mean names. And I was like, well, that's kind of mean. And then, you know how bad his mom was. Like, you can think of the names he was likely calling his mom. Well, anyway, so I was like, okay, well, you know, I want to get dessert or whatever. And this lady, there was a heavier lady, and he was like, oh, you don't want to look like her. Like, I was like, why are we so mean? Like, why are we being that way? And he continued to go on, and he was like, you should come to my apartment with me. You should come to my apartment with me. You should come to my apartment with me, you know? And I just was like, no. And he didn't get anything. But when my check came, like, he literally slid his card there, and I was like, no, thank you. I don't want you to think I owe you anything. I just want to go. And so he literally, it was like a Friday night or Saturday. I can't remember. I think it was a Friday night. And he literally went and sat on the trunk of my car, and he folded his arms and he said, I'm not leaving. I said, you know, I did my thing. I didn't like to be mean, similarly to most of you likely. And I said to them, I said, because it had always got me by before. And I just smiled real big and I said, could you get off my car, please? And he is like, I'm not getting off your car until you agree to go to my apartment with me. And I literally felt a punch in my gut. And I literally took a deep breath and I was like, okay, you need to get off my car right now, or I'm going back into Denny's and I'm going to get the sheriff and he's going to tell you to get off my car. To which point he gets off my car, and he says, you don't have to be a bee. And I was like, I told you to get off my car and you wouldn't listen. And so I get in my car and I go back to my apartment at my university. And I literally am shaking. All my roommates are asleep. And I see him walking up and down the sidewalk. And then the next morning I see him again. But best case scenario for me was not even a best case scenario. I think he had nefarious plans. And I think that worst case scenario, I'd be in a ditch somewhere and my family wouldn't know where I was. If I had gotten into that car, I would have had no control. And it is true that oftentimes when you're younger, you think you're invincible, but you're not, especially when someone intends to harm you in whatever way. I later heard that he was telling people that he was an assassin for the U.S. Army, which I highly doubt, but a very strange character indeed. I often look him up to see if there's anything that's occurred with him. Excuse me. So you can replace I don't want to be rude with I need to be safe. Replace maybe I'm overreacting with something feels off and that's enough. Because oftentimes your gut knows before your brain catches up. So when I worked at a rape crisis shelter, this pattern showed up again and again. Not because women were weak, but because they were conditioned to prioritize other people's comfort over their own safety. And that can be extremely difficult and extremely heart-wrenching. And ultimately, I'll be honest, I mean, I have done similar things like that where I haven't been fully aware because, you know, when you're younger, you're kind of dumber too. But now, like, my gut is like my go-to. So in closing, the moment someone doesn't actually take your no seriously, you are no longer in a social interaction. You are in a boundary negotiation. And the more you agree with them, the further away from your boundary that you get. And you are allowed to walk away from that without explanation. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt the pressure to be nice when something felt off, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to comment on this podcast below. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Next, we're going to part 2, so stay tuned.